much. The graveyard shift is never good, and I see this afternoon we have a very big venue, so if I don't see you, if you ask a question or something, one needs to be kind of Trapsiki or something to see everybody this afternoon. I'll try and just recap what happened in the last year. Normally, somewhere in the session, Sabawa asked me to recap on what has happened over the last year. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of drafts and things that take place and that gets published, etc., but there has not been a lot of implementation as far as legislation is concerned. So I'll just quickly take you through what's there. Some very busy slides, but I think the presentation will be available afterwards so you can get it. Legislation doesn't really make for nice pictures, so this is just a lot of words, so if you just bear with me as far as that is concerned. Things that have been published over the last year and a half that may be of interest to the industry. The National Law Enforcement Code for Traffic Officers was published for comment. That was already in 2010. So far they have not republished the document at all, so I'm not sure what the status of that document is. The Road Traffic Management Corporation is responsible for that. Then there was the National Road Traffic Amendment Act that was part of a twofold amendment in the legislation that created a huge amount of confusion over the last year, because a part of the legislation was already implemented in 1999 and the rest of it was implemented in November 2010, and we still get inquiries up to now from people that do not understand where the legislation fits in, what has been enforced and so forth. I'll try and just elaborate on that. Then there's been the Amendment Act of 2008 that has covered quite a number of issues, which is more for the freight industry, haulage tractors, consignors and consignees of freight vehicles and so forth. That will also have a huge impact on the industry, but not so much on the bus industry. Then there was a General Regulation Amendment, the 17th Amendment, that was published in November 2010. An 18th Regulation Amendment was published in February 2011. Both of those were found to be not correct in terms of the legislation. It wasn't published for 4 weeks for comment, so they were revoked. And they were republished again in June. And I'll just cover what was in there and how that changed what you were doing, specifically as far as roadworthies and those kind of things go. Then the Toll Fee Gazette was published in February last year, and that was also put on hold. And we had the announcement yesterday. I'll just quickly discuss that as well. And then there was a number of small amendments that came through on things in the road traffic legislation, as well as an R2 draft regulation that was published. Also, no final documentation that was published there. Then there was an old gazette that caused some problems in November 2010 as far as the bus operators were concerned, because in a gazette that was already published about a year earlier, an amendment was put through that roadworthy certificates for buses would only be valid for 6 months instead of 1 year, and that caught quite a few traffic departments as well as the industry unawares. They did not know that this legislation came into force. There's still no good resolution for that. Currently, it's quite a messy business to comply with the legislation. And then there was also a few short things that happened, like learner's licenses changing from 18 to 24 months, and ISO containers that suddenly do not need to have a height restriction. Those kind of things was published as small notices throughout the year. So just to give you then a recap on those things, if you are involved in something other than the bus industry as well. As far as the proclamations were concerned, the road traffic legislation was originally published on 1 August 2000. As part of that publication, there was a split in the legislation, for the simple reason that a whole lot of the provisions in the Road Traffic Act referred to the CEO of the Road Traffic Management Corporation. However, at that stage in 2000, that corporation didn't exist yet. So they could not put those sections of the legislation in force. At the time, the idea was that 4 months later, the RTMC would be in place, so they simply put the legislation in force and created a bit of an artificial legal situation where bits and pieces of the old Road Traffic Act, Act 29 of 89, remained in force. Unfortunately, the manner in which it happened actually technically put the entire Act into force, which meant that there were some provisions in the Act that for a period of 10 years were not complied with. The Department of Transport then republished the transitional provision in 2008, tying over all those provisions that had a legal problem, and in November 2010, they proclaimed the remainder of that Act. So the result of that was that part of the legislation that was originally published in 1999 was then immediately effective as well, but for the last 10 years. So if you're now all thoroughly confused, then I've achieved what I wanted to. The legislation then created a huge mess because one needed to really go and do a math sum to see what's in, what's out, who's supposed to be appointed in terms of what. But at this stage, the status is the entire National Road Traffic Act is in force. However, you have to go now and look at the back of the legislation. There's a transitional provision in the act, at the back of the Act, Section 93A, as well as a transitional provision at the back of the regulations, which in most cases transfers the duties of the CEO of the Road Traffic Management Corporation back to the MECs of the provinces or to the Minister of Transport. So right through the legislation, those of you who may be reading that on a regular basis, I know that's not very interesting, but it's necessary. As you see the term Shareholders Committee and CEO, there's no duties for those guys at this stage yet. All of those duties still lie with the provinces and with the Minister of Transport. So that was basically the original amendments. Then just to take you through some of those amendments that have now been effective for the last year, a traffic officer must now have a name tag. If an officer does not have a name tag, he's technically not in uniform. So he's not allowed to stop you and he's not allowed to charge you because he needs a name tag. There are quite a few of them that do not know this and they do not do this. So please take note. They can only stop you when they are in uniform, and that section of the legislation makes the tag part of the uniform. Then as far as some other amendments were concerned, there were amendments that allow now for reserve traffic officers and so forth. There's definitions for haulage tractors, again not so much for the passenger industry, more for the freight industry. If you have these kinds of vehicles, for the last year we've had an interesting situation in the legislation where they've split a tractor category into two. If you own a tractor that's got a gross combination mass exceeding 24 tons, there's supposed to be a different set of rules applicable. And then for tractors under 24 tons, another set. The under 24 tons is treated like a farm tractor. You don't need to comply with all the rules and regulations. As far as indicators and big vehicle licenses and things like that, the moment you've got something over 24 tons, you need to. However, the legislation, as far as the definition change, came into force, but there's no provisions yet for those vehicles. So there's currently no laws that manage haulage tractors. They've also added some information on medical and firefighting response vehicles, where they are now allowed to go to accident scenes without being an actual ambulance or firefighting vehicle. It can just be a normal vehicle that is transporting a paramedic or something to a scene. In the past, that was not allowed. Then there's a number of amendments that came through as far as licenses are concerned. Now I know that those people sitting here, you all have driving licenses, but if R2 has its way, you may be sitting in that position again one of these days and you may be tempted. Please take note. If they catch you with any crib notes or anything, you will now be charged as far as being in possession of documentation that allows you to pass a test. So if you do have about 13 demerit points against your name in the near future and you need to go and sit your limits test again, just remember these kind of things that will take place. You're not allowed to photocopy a license and keep it in your vehicle. You may photocopy it for other purposes, but not for presenting it as a driving license. Furthermore, they've also disqualified anyone that has been found guilty of cheating with the learners or a driving license test from reapplying for the next 12 months. So very serious on that legislation at this stage, and that already came into force. Then there's a fun section which, regardless of how many times I tell people about this, they still do not believe that it's already in force. Section 35 of the Road Traffic Act has got nothing to do with R2. It is applicable in the entire country, and it is added to offences where there's an automatic suspension of your driving license. If they catch you doing more than 30 k's over the speed limit in town, or more than 40 k's over the speed limit outside of town, you cannot get a fine. They have to arrest you, they have to take you to court, and the magistrate needs to fine you there. And then he has to suspend your driving license. First offence 6 months, second offence 5 years, third offence 10 years. So if you were caught doing 91 in the 60 zone, and the traffic officer arrests you, you must not be surprised. That is actually what the legislation says. So that people tend to link that to R2. It is the case in Joburg and Tshwane as well, because this section is applicable there too. It just means where R2 is enforced, you will not get an R2-1 notice under those circumstances. In the rest of the country, you will not get a Section 56 notice. Somebody is having a very ardent discussion up there. Then just as far as roadworthy certificates are concerned, in the past, the legislation simply said any roadworthy certificate that's issued in a foreign country is deemed valid in South Africa, if it comes from our neighbouring states. They've now limited that to foreign vehicles. So if you have got a South African registered vehicle and you go across the country to our neighbouring states, don't go and get a roadworthy there and come and present it on the side. They don't accept that. It must be a South African roadworthy certificate that you have to present. Nothing else is acceptable. Only for foreign vehicles, they still allow the other ones. Then the legislation has also allowed the Minister of Transport to have detailed provisions regarding accident reporting, etc. There's no regulations on that yet, but I'll come back to that as part of the Section 75 discussion. So there's some gaps in the legislation where the Act says the following shall be prescribed, and then there's no regulations to actually tell you what's supposed to be happening. So it may actually pose a legal challenge in future, but for the last year and a half, we've had no regulations relating to that. Then there's also provisions, the inspectorates for testing stations and driving license testing centres. Maybe some of you here that own your own testing station. Many of the bus companies do have an in-house testing station. Please just take note, these guys are supposed to now be having to go through a training process, and the Minister has to prescribe training requirements for them. Currently there is no regulation that relates to that. They've also extended the persons who are allowed to use any emergency kind of lab. I've already told you about the medical and the firefighting response guys, but the legislation has also got some unfortunate wording in. It says any person issued with the necessary authorization is allowed to have one of these lamps. I'm not sure what the intention of the legislation was, supposedly to allow the politicians to have blue lights, but at this stage, there is no prescription of who these people are supposed to be, where they're supposed to be getting the authorization. My husband has indicated that he's going to authorize himself, because it seems like that would be possible in terms of the wording of the legislation as it stands now. But that was put into the legislation about a year and a half ago. So the regulation of who's allowed to use the blue light has definitely watered down since this provision came into force. But again, it may be challenged because there's no detail in there to say who and what, where this is supposed to be happening. Just as far as the Minister's powers were concerned, it was extended to allow for habitual overloaders, for consignments and consignee legislation, as well as for law enforcement equipment. He's now allowed to make regulations on all of those. At this stage, none of those regulations have been published yet. I've seen a draft document where some of these things are addressed, but it has not been published for comment yet. Then there was a strange provision in the legislation which may affect you depending on whether the Bureau of Standards and the Department of Transport is in 100% sync with each other as far as amendments to the legislation is concerned. The Road Traffic Act has a provision in that says the moment the Minister of Transport refers to any South African national standard in legislation, by reference he incorporates that entire standard into the legislation. So from a roadworthy requirement perspective, there's about 200 regulations in the road traffic legislation that deals with roadworthiness of vehicles. But in about every second or third regulation, there's a reference to a South African national standard. And technically, all of those are now regulations as well. So if you look at the road traffic legislation, you look at a stack of stuff like that, that regulates the quality of motor vehicles on our roads. Now, in the past, the legislation used to read that the moment the Bureau changes its specification, then that specification with its changes will automatically become the legislation. The department has now changed that, and at this stage it says that legislation has to be reincorporated. So you may technically sit with a situation where South African national standard has been amended, but because it's not been reincorporated yet, the on-the-road operational requirement would be the old standard, and the legislation that the Bureau is using would be the new standard. So please just take note of that. If there's no automatic reincorporation, any spec that have changed since November 2010, if it has not been specifically reincorporated into the legislation, the prior version of that legislation still exists. So those of you with testing stations, please also take note of that. There was also some amendments on abnormal vehicles. Hopefully none of you, as far as passenger transport is concerned, are using any of those. Please just take note that that has also been split into two. if you want to apply for any vehicle that does not conform to the legislation, there are basically two processes. The one is getting principal approval for the concept to allow you to have a vehicle that does not conform to the legislation. That now is situated with the Minister of Transport. And then once you've got that permission, you are allowed to go ahead, build the vehicle, get the homologation, but then you still need to go to the province where the vehicle is used and get the operational permit that allows you to use that vehicle on the road with the necessary conditions that go with that. So it's a twofold process, where in the past this all happened with one of the provinces. You must first now get the approval from the minister, and then you go to the provinces for the additional approval. Otherwise, you might be building a vehicle that does not conform, and then you do not get approval for it, so you cannot put it on the South African road. That applies to vehicles that you import as well. Then, as far as the legislation is concerned, that was implemented in 2000, well, that was published in 2008. We're currently sitting with a strange situation. In the past, up to November 2010, the older fees, whether it was for driving license or registration and licensing or anything of that nature, was published by the provinces concerned. So the province had a gazette stating miscellaneous fees and registration and licensing fees. In November 2010, the legislation changed to say the registration and licensing fees are still the responsibility of the MECs, but all other miscellaneous fees has to be prescribed by the Minister of Transport. Which effectively meant the provinces could not change their fees anymore because they had no responsibility to do that. There was no power in the legislation for it. But the National Department has not published any fees yet. So we have a gap as far as our national fees are concerned. The registration and licensing fees continue to be the provincial concern. They are responsible for that. However, some provinces did change their regulations after that and raise their fees. But technically the Act doesn't allow that anymore. There was also a bill in the legislation that covers driving schools and how people will be getting licenses in future. As far as I can understand, that bill is up for the parliamentary process in the first quarter this year, where they will change the legislation to cater for provisional licenses. The last bill that was published was about 2-3 years old. They have not published a new one yet with details, but it sounds like they will be regulating driving schools, requiring them to have a premises, and requiring them to comply with certain provisions, the same as a testing station and a testing centre, where there must be a certain level of standard, because the end result would be that they will force people to go for driving instructor lessons before they are entitled to get their licenses. And then they will go through a process of earning a learner's license, a provisional license, and then, let's say, a stage 2 provisional license, which allows them additional privileges, but not full privileges of a normal driver on the road. That legislation is then also on its way somewhere along the line. There is currently nothing that says if you have a truck license or a bus license, you're not allowed to drive a car. There was legislation like that. It was revoked again. It sounds like the new legislation will rather be getting a small license for a car first and then progressing from there, so that you cannot start right away with a bus license or with a truck license. Which will obviously make your drivers fewer out there. You are going to, especially truck drivers, they can at this stage get a license at 18. If they change it like this, they will be older before they can get a truck license. Then as far as the regulations were concerned, I've already discussed the driving licenses. That was changed to say you can't drive a car with a truck license, but that has been revoked again. Then as far as the roadworthy certificates were concerned, that created a huge hoo-ha out there. The original amendment said any roadworthy test would only be valid for 21 days instead of the 6 months it used to be valid. So practically what you had is you could go and test the vehicle anywhere in the 6 months before it had to be relicensed, and on relicensing they simply checked on the system, they saw there was a test for this thing, and they issued you with a new 12-month roadworthy for that vehicle together with your license disc. Then they changed it to 21 days. There was no transitionals in there to tie over guys who already had tests. So for 4 or 5 months people were testing all the time. They then revoked those regulations. It went back to the 6 months, and then in June 2011, they changed it to 60 days. So at this point in time, whenever you're supposed to go relicense a vehicle, your relicensing needs to happen within the 60 days after you have gone through the test. Otherwise, you will again have to go and retest it. So please take note, that is the current position, but you need to read a few gazettes to get to that. Otherwise, you might be sitting with the 21-day one or a 6-month one or whatever. Then the number plate legislation was also changed to force newer vehicles to have fixed number plates that cannot be removed. The date for that used to be vehicles from 1 January 2009. It was then moved to August 2010, and the latest one says August 2011. So if you own a vehicle that is younger than August 2011, the number plate must be fixed with self-tapping screws or pop rivets on the vehicle, or you must have a backing plate that is screwed to the vehicle and the plate is then fixed onto that, so that you cannot just simply remove a plate from the vehicle. And that's then only for the new vehicles. The older vehicles do not need to have it. The left-hand drive vehicles, I know there are some guys with buses out there and they created a huge problem. Left-hand drive vehicles at this stage, very involved legislation, but the bottom line is, as long as that vehicle was first registered somewhere in South Africa before 23 July 2004, it is legal on the road. If you have a vehicle that's younger than that, or you want to buy one from a neighbouring state and it's got a left-hand drive, don't buy it because you can't register the license. You will not get a letter of authority for that vehicle. So please take note, that's basically the cutoff. If you have a vehicle prior to that date, you may sell it as well. And the new owner may license it. That legislation was also cleaned up in June last year. Then there was provisions as far as directional stability control devices. There are two regulations that relate to this. The one is a roadworthy testing regulation, which requires a certificate to say that your vehicle has a vehicle directional stability control device. There's a specification that states what is regarded as stability control devices, and new vehicles, minibuses and buses, from this year July, doing this presentation last time, from this year July, they would have to have that for new vehicles. So it's for vehicles registered after that day. And it covers all three. If you have a look at some of the previous amendments, the one only referred to minibuses and minibuses, and the other one referred to minibuses, and buses. So that's anything from 10 seats upwards that is going to require this. They cannot test it at the vehicle testing station, so you have to fit it somewhere, or you have to get a statement from the manufacturer, construction control or something like that, and that has to be submitted to the testing station to allow you to get a roadworthy certificate for those vehicles. The provision on the tyre regulations has not been implemented yet, but I understand that that will come into force by July to coincide with this provision. Foreign licenses. More and more our Zimbabwean neighbours are becoming very, very popular drivers of our vehicles. Unfortunately, our legislation is still very grey as far as that is concerned. The acknowledgement of the license itself, that was changed in the legislation to say you have to be out of the country for at least 3 months to allow another license of another country to be valid here. So if you have a guy that's in Zimbabwe and he lives here, he goes across the border and he gets a license there and he comes back, that license is never valid in South Africa. If he comes from there with a valid driving license and he was not living here at the time that he got it, he's allowed to use that license indefinitely in South Africa. If it has his signature, photograph, it must still be valid in his own country and it must be in one of our official languages or translation must be attached. Then that license is considered valid. The moment he gets permanent residency in South Africa, he must change that license within 1 year. Failure to do that would mean he can no longer drive on the road. After 5 years, he will also not be able to change it over anymore. That is what the amendment that came through basically stated. It has not addressed professional driving permits at all. The current legislation on PRDPs, I think I get a Zimbabwean driving license inquiry twice a week at least. The legislation says the Minister of Transport can indicate which prescribed countries' documents is acceptable, but there is no such regulation. So the only interpretation that one can currently have is it says any document serving a similar purpose in that country will be accepted here. Currently, a PRDP requires a medical test and a previous conviction test. So if the country that this guy is coming from has some additional document that allows for that, then that document should be acceptable here. If, however, it's a different kind of thing, like a practical driving test or something that they do additionally, then that does not serve a similar purpose and you can technically not say that guy has a PRDP. The big issue here is if you allow guys from other countries with lower standards than ours to come and drive here, you automatically create a safety hazard, but you will also create a labour hazard. Because you have the South African drivers that are required to do a certain number of things and go forth, biannual road release for them, medical tests and so forth, but at the same time, a guy coming from another country never needs to do something like that. So that is definitely legislation that needs some clearing up. At this stage, there's some insurance issues that go around that, where insurance companies sometimes fail to pay, and then they get taken to the ombudsman and so forth, and it seems to be that there's no specific single line of thought as far as this is concerned. The Department of Transport also contacted them in this regard, and you find that in certain instances, people say if you are legal in your own country, you are legal here, and in other instances it says if you don't have a PRDP, you are not allowed to drive here. So I don't have an answer on that one. I can just tell you, as a motorway driving license specifically is a problem because they do not have something similar to a PRDP. They have something that they call a defensive driving certificate, and that document relates to practical defensive driving tests. The breath alcohol legislation, that was finally cleared up. Unfortunately, the court case came by just before the amendment came through, and there was a court case in Cape Town where it was decided that some of the procedures that's used for the breath alcohol machines were not up to standard as far as the judge was concerned. So it sounds like at this stage breath alcohol prosecutions are not happening. They are using blood, and unfortunately I think the Joburg lab is taking a year for a blood result. So the blood alcohol is not such a successful manner of prosecution than the breath. They are busy, there's working groups busy sorting out all the problems with the breath alcohol. It's more practical issues that the judge pointed out, and it sounds like the moment they're finished with that, they are going to start using the breath alcohol machines again, which means they can catch a person every 6 minutes, whereas with the blood alcohol, you need 2 officers that's basically occupied for 2 hours. So it's not such a successful way of doing it. Then as far as the other amendments that came about that have not been finalized, the legislation last year was published to say that all motor vehicles from July last year needed microdots. Then suddenly on 2 July last year, there were some traffic departments that required microdot certificates before they would register your vehicle. That provision was just a draft. It was out for comment, it was never implemented. At this point in time, there is no legislation on that. So they may in the future still implement it, but at this point in time, there is nothing as far as microdots in vehicles are concerned. The legislation that is in draft format, it circulated last year to various organizations for comment, and there's a newer draft of that same legislation that's also circulating. They are covering consignment and consignee legislation, that's more for freight vehicles, where they need to control the mass that goes out of the yard. Passenger vehicles are not subject to that. And then they are also going to require the weighbridge inspections, the fact that a consignor needs to know what the mass on the axle is, not only on the vehicle. There's also stuff in there on driving hours. As far as I know, they're also not going to introduce that for the passenger industry, only for the freight industry. And then the haulage tractor legislation is also coming in there. So I've covered that already. Then when we come to our beloved R2, the last announcement was in the newspapers actually, stating that 1 April would be the date on which R2 is coming into force. Please note, there's nothing in any government gazette yet. For R2 to come into force, the President of the country needs to publish a proclamation that says the R2 Act applies everywhere now, because the proclamations that's there at the moment restricts R2 to Tshwane and Johannesburg. Nowhere else there's any R2 legislation. The department and the RTMC has also published a set of draft regulations last year where they have changed certain things in the legislation that has also not been published yet. And we assume that it's obviously changes that they want to make, so they will not implement R2 unless those provisions are also in the legislation. The points demerit system can only come into force after the Act is implemented everywhere, and the Minister of Transport issues a notice to say Regulation 24 of the R2 regulations comes into force. So this nice email all of you are getting that says 12 o'clock last night the R2 legislation came into force. That is not true. That is an old email that is now about 15 years old, and it resurfaces and recirculates. I think some guys are doing R2 training, and they make that thing resurface every few months, and then everybody is in a panic, and then they start doing R2 training, so they create work for themselves. That is not currently the case. The points demerit system will only come into force once the entire act is in place. So if everyone in the country receives R2 tickets instead of criminal procedure tickets, that is the only time they can put the demerit points in force. As far as the pilot project is concerned, so far they have not run the pilot anywhere to the full extent. Because R2 has 4 processes. You get an infringement notice, you get a courtesy letter, an enforcement order, and then they send the sheriff with a warrant to come and fetch your stuff and sell it and pay the fine. Now, for that to happen, all the documents along the way needed to be either served on you personally or sent by registered mail, despite what anybody is saying, and it has to be done through a registered mail process where the post office sends you a notice to say, there's something for you at the post office, you must go and sign for it, and then that document is served. If you don't go and fetch it, 10 days after they mailed it, they accept that you received it. If you haven't, they don't care. Then they have gone through a formal serving process. That needs to happen for an infringement notice, a courtesy letter, and an enforcement order. If you have not reacted on any one of those 3, then they may send the sheriff to your house. At this point in time, as far as I know, not one case has gone to that point. Mr. Jeff Chewy from the RTIA announced the other day that the first enforcement orders were out there, which basically means if you have an enforcement order on your vehicle, they will block you on notice. So your driver will not, or if the enforcement order is against your driver, you won't be able to get a license disc or a professional driving permit, and your vehicle will not get a license disc. That block is countrywide. So if you have a vehicle in Pretoria that you haven't paid a ticket for, and you have an enforcement order, and you need to go and relicense a vehicle in Port Elizabeth, you will not get a license disc for that Port Elizabeth vehicle as well, despite the fact that R2 is not enforced there. Because in Pretoria and Joburg's legislation, it says you will not get any license discs for any of your vehicles. So please take note, if you have enforcement orders, the ones that were served in Tshwane was served properly, and they are now the ones that are blocking the system. As far as I know, none of the Joburg ones are blocking it because they have not served in my registered one. The draft legislation that was published last year, I've heard rumors that they have rewritten a lot of that. But basically, the things that you may take note of, at this stage, in Joburg and Tshwane, a foreigner doesn't get any discount. So if there's a ticket, he pays the full amount, but when R2 comes into force fully and demerit points are there, he will not get any demerit points, whereas the South African driver will get demerit points. The suggestion in that legislation was that foreigners will be getting 3 times the fine, not only the normal fine. I'm not sure whether they're going to follow through with that, but that would technically mean if there's a ticket for 1,000 rand and 3 demerit points, your South African driver would be allowed to pay 500 rand and get the 3 points against his driving license, and your foreign driver would pay 3,000. That would basically be the 2 things that you have to weigh against each other, but then obviously there's no points. As far as the documentation is concerned, currently everything in the R2 system that has any evidence value has to be signed by a Commissioner of Oaths. A very unpopular practice, because in most cases that means standing in a queue at a police station or something. There's rumors that they want to take that away, but it will water down the value of the evidence that they're collecting. So whether they're going to go away with it, I don't know. The other thing that they want to do is to change the operator charges. As you know, when your driver gets caught for anything driving license related, any roadworthy offence, any overloading charge or dangerous goods offence, when the driver gets a fine, the owner of that company will also get the fine. Currently, all the fines in the R2 system for operators is 1,250 rand and 4 points. So if your driver gets charged smooth tyre on the bus, 500 rand, 1 point for the driver. That's his ticket. They will then pick up on the system, this is a bus, it has an operator card, and that is a roadworthy offence. Then they will charge the company that you have allowed a vehicle that was not roadworthy on the road, 1,250 rand fine, 40 demerit points. And both will then be charged individually for these. Same evidence, different offences. What they're going to do now, it seems, is that they are going to split those charges for unroadworthiness, dangerous goods, etc., into smaller categories, and the operators will also be getting fines ranging from 1 to 6, so the demerit points will be different for the various fines, and the fines will also be different. But that has not been published for comment yet, but it sounds like that is the way that they're going to go with the operator charges. So you may find some of the things that you now think you're going to get 4 points for, you may only get 1, but other things that you currently got 4 points for, you may be arrested for, depending on how serious the legislator feels those things are going to be. As far as I understand, that set of regulations has to be submitted to the Minister of Justice, and that's where it's lying at the moment, before it's going to be published. Then, as far as the offences are concerned, please just take note, in the R2 system, you still have the opportunity to be arrested. If you commit an offence, like in Tshwane, if you're driving around with no number plates on your vehicle, that is an offence. You get arrested for that. There's no fine for it. And the same thing will happen with the 40 k's over the speed limit outside of town, 40 k's over the speed limit in town. R2 has created 2 new forms that will come in as well, where the officer will be allowed to release you on a form and not having to arrest you and take you to the police station, and then only release you there. They will be able to do it right there next to the road, and then you will be summoned at a later date to go to your court. Those are the things that they are busy looking at. There's just the new fine values. You'll see one of the main gripes of Joburg is they have to send these things by registered mail. So the solution was to charge you for the registered mail. So if you have a look at that, the new suggested amendment is they add 40 Rand to the value of every fine and 20 Rand to the discount, and that's going to cover the registered mail fees. So all the fines that you currently have in the R2 system will be 40 Rand. And then our toll tariffs. After this, I'll duck up behind the counter. The SANRAL toll fee notice was suspended by the Minister in February last year. The new announcement was made yesterday that 30 April was going to be the date on which it comes into force. The 30 cents that the Minister announced is the e-tag tariff, as far as I can understand, for motor cars. Remember, there are 4 groups of vehicles in the system. Motorcycles, vehicles that's not more than 2.5 meters high and 6 meters long. They do not classify them by weight like you are used to at the other toll gates. It's a volumetric system where they measure your vehicles. Then you have a bigger vehicle between 6 and 12.5 meters, and then you have your big vehicles. So there are 4 categories, and this is the value for the motor car, or the one between 2.5 and 6 meters. If you look at the old Gazette, you can see that there are different categories, and there's also different types of toll fees depending on what you pay. There's a mean value, which is what you pay if you are not a registered customer and you don't have an e-tag, and if you pay within a period of 7 days after you've used the road. If you get an e-tag, you will pay the discounted tariff, and there's also additional discounts about what time of the day you are using the vehicle, all kinds of things like that. There's an exemption in the legislation for commuter vehicles, and the legislation that is going to formalise this and create some additional offences and so forth is the Transport Law Enforcement Amendment Bill, and also the regulations in terms of the existing SANRAL legislation. And that is most probably going to be published and finalised shortly. Just as far as the system is concerned, as you know, it's open road, so you don't go through any toll plaza. Because of that, there's been a lot of people out there that says the legislation doesn't allow for that. That's not true. On the track toll roads, on the N1 toll roads, there's already toll gates there with no boom gates. So we've had people in the past actually driving through those gates too, and they have been charged. The existing SANRAL Act says you commit a criminal offence if you drive through a toll gate and you have not paid, and if you have not made arrangements for payment. The legislation also allows them to collect toll fees electronically. So that is all in the existing Act that's been there since 1998. As far as the accounts are concerned, you are capable of registering and getting this e-tag. You can go and buy it at Pick n Pay and then go and register online. And then you will either choose a credit card to pay with, or you will have like a prepaid cell phone account where you will fund the account and you will choose when the authority must tell you that there's only 50 Rand left in the account, or whatever the situation may be. They've done a lot of calculations, and it sounds like The average guy won't pay more than about 200 Rand, and that was with the old tariff, so maybe even less at this point in time. Some of these calculations in the newspapers are obviously to make it look as bad as possible. That is the worst case scenario of a guy that never pays anything in time, and he never has an e-tag, and he doesn't get any discounts. And that's what you basically see in the newspapers. You will also be, if you're from outside of the Gauteng area, you'll be allowed to get an occasional user day pass, which you can just buy for the day. So you'll get 1 day pass, and it will allow you to use all the toll roads for a specific date. The exemption for public transport vehicles, the latest information I have on that is that public transport vehicles, which are providing a commuter service, so it's your normal commuters and your school children that are using the freeways and that have to go through a toll plaza as part of their route, they will get an exemption for those roads. So they will have to apply for it. As far as I can understand, the principle will be that you will get an e-tag because they have to identify this vehicle, otherwise you are going to be put on the system as an offender, but then you will not be billed for that transport. But obviously, that same commuter vehicle might also be travelling on other routes where he's not providing the service, and he may go through a toll gate, and for that he will be charged. So that is the latest information that I have on that. None of it has been published. I think they were waiting for the announcement yesterday. The regulations is with the Minister of Transport, so he will most probably put it to the Gazette shortly. Then just in conclusion, as you can see, the legislation is very much in limbo at the moment. Most of it is this is coming, that is coming. Very few of the things are actually implemented. But if they roll out R2, they roll out the toll fees, and they change all the provisions in the legislation in the next year, next year's presentation will look very different from this one because we will already see what all the changes have been. So it's necessary to keep up to date, which is quite challenging in terms of the system because it's different bits and pieces of legislation, but they all fall under the Department of Transport, and they are finally responsible for putting all of these things through the legislation. If we have R2 by 1 April, then most probably you will have a bigger audience here next time around because people will then have been subject to that legislation for some time. Thank you very much.